The Supreme Court thought they could stop Trump's tariff revolution. The Democrats and the legacy media celebrated the decision like it was V-Day. But within hours, to their utter horror, Trump did something no one thought possible. And it's sending shockwaves throughout the entire political establishment. Stick with me to the very end of this video, because we're going to see how the globalists didn't just lose a battle in this. They lost the entire war. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, celebrating yet another day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. All right, so last Friday, the Supreme Court handed down their ruling on President Trump's tariffs. That's at least the way the legacy media wanted their dwindling audience to see it. The Supreme Court ruled against President Trump's tariffs, and now the entire world was scrambling to get their money back and all that. Well, as it turns out, that is actually not what happened last week, and the legacy media and their dwindling audience are learning that reality the hard way. What the Supreme Court actually ruled was that President Trump could not use what's called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that's the IEEPA, to impose tariffs. So Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority that the IEEPA contains no reference to tariffs or duties, and that no president has ever read it to confer that power. Now, regardless of the merits or the demerits of the decision, obviously Thomas Alito and Kavanaugh are all saying, and I think rightly so, that it was a ridiculously flawed decision. Regardless, what the Democrats and the legacy media missed in all of this is that a lot of Trump's tariffs were imposed outside of the IEEPA, using instead what's known as Section 232, the Trade Expansion Act, which he had already used back in his first term to impose steel and aluminum tariffs, and the Section 122 of the Trade Act, which allows up to 15% tariffs for 150 days to address international payment issues like trade deficits. And so when you go down the list, you'll find that roughly 30% of Trump's tariffs were imposed either by Section 232 or Section 122. So we're talking about 50% tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, lumber, imported automobiles and parts. He's imposed broad tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese imports and the like. And so in the dissenting opinion drafted by Justice Kavanaugh, that dissenting opinion basically gave Trump a roadmap for how all tariffs could continue unabated in such a way that the court would respect. And Trump didn't waste a second on that. Within hours of the ruling, he signed an executive order ending the IEEPA tariffs and simultaneously slapped a 15% global tariff under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. Section 122, again, allows the president to impose tariffs of up to 15% for 150 days to address balance of payment problems. It's a bridge, right? It's a tactical pause button. It buys him 150 days while his administration launches new investigations under what's known as Section 301 as well as Section 232 that will result in permanent, legally bulletproof tariffs. And here's the beautiful part. Because the Supreme Court has now clarified the legal framework, no lower court can touch him. So if some activist judge in some liberal district tries to block a Section 232 or 301 tariff, the government cites the Supreme Court's own opinion, and it gets laughed out of court. Trump even pointed out another angle the court didn't think about: licensing power. The court they said that Trump does indeed have the power under IEEPA to regulate importation. He just can't charge a tariff. Okay, fine. So instead of a tariff, he can use licensing requirements to make it impossible for certain countries to do business here. So he can squeeze them without charging a single dime. And it's 100% legal. The court basically said you can blow up the bridge right from Canada to Detroit to stop what's coming in. You just can't charge the toll. Okay, fine. If the bridge is blown up, you don't need a toll. And then this is the part I absolutely love. Trump issued an ultimatum to the entire world. Any country that wants to play games with this ridiculous decision, especially those that have ripped off the United States for years and even decades, will be met with a much higher tariff and worse than that which they recently agreed to. Buyer beware. That's the President of the United States telling every single nation on earth, if you think this ruling is your escape hatch, you're about to find out how wrong you are. So it's no wonder that Trump took to Truth Social and posted this, and I'm paraphrasing, "Thank you, Supreme Court. You just accidentally gave me more power and strength than I had before your ridiculous ruling." And what he means by that is, this is the part that the legacy media either doesn't understand or they're deliberately trying to hide from you. Before this ruling, Trump was using IEEPA. You could think of it as kind of like a Swiss Army knife for tariffs. It was fast. It was broad. He could declare an emergency. He could slap tariffs on anyone. But the problem was IEEPA was always getting challenged in court. Lawsuits were everywhere. Legal uncertainty. Businesses didn't know if the tariffs would stick. Now the Supreme Court has given Trump crystal clear legal clarity on what he can do. They affirmed, either explicitly or by implication, that Section 232, which deals with national security tariffs, and Section 301, which deals with unfair trade practices, are fully within the president's authority. Those tariffs, untouched, 100% legal, affirmed by the highest court in the land. And he's not just going after foreign adversaries, he's cleaning house at home. On Saturday, Trump pulled his endorsement from Colorado Republican Jeff Hurd after Hurd was one of just 6 Republicans who voted with Democrats to repeal Trump's tariffs on Canada. Trump called him, rightly, a rhino and said he's more interested in protecting foreign countries that have been ripping us off for decades than he is the United States of America. And he endorsed instead Hurd's primary challenger, Hope Schepelman, a Navy veteran. The message to every Republican Congress could not be more crystal clear. You either stand with the America First tariff agenda or you stand in the unemployment line. No more hedging, no more playing both sides. You're either with the 75 million Americans who elected Trump to do exactly this, or you're gone. And what's so absolutely astonishing in all of this is it's not just 75 million Americans. As it turns out, literally billions are embracing Trumpian economics like never before. Wait until you see this. It's going to absolutely blow you away. But first, all of this geopolitical tension should remind us of something. What if the censored medicine that saved millions during the pandemic was being made mostly in China today? It's actually true. About 80% of the world's ivermectin supply comes from Asia, but not at the wellness company introducing American-made ivermectin. Safe, trusted, tested, and produced locally in the great free state of Florida. Ivermectin has been prescribed globally for more than 30 years and even earned the Nobel Prize in Medicine for its proven ability to eliminate parasites. But after success treating COVID, emerging research shows the wonder drug can help with everything from rosacea, arthritis, and even cancer. Most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet for 12 milligrams or less, but the wellness company is offering a higher 18 milligram dose for just $3.50 per tablet. You'll get a 6-month supply of 84 tablets, all at an unbeatable price. Just click on that link below and support American medicine and patriot doctors, not China's supply chain. Get your U.S.-made ivermectin today at twc.health/Turley and use code Turley to save $45 off plus free shipping. Click on that link below right now. What's really happening here is so much bigger than just one Supreme Court ruling or one executive order. What we're witnessing is nothing less than the restoration of economic nationalism, not just here in America, but indeed around the entire world. And I want you to understand just how seismic this shift really is. You know, for decades, going all the way back to the end of the Cold War, the ruling orthodoxy in Washington and London and Brussels and Davos was liberal globalism, right? Free trade at all costs, open borders for capital, outsourcing everything, let China make it cheaper. And the theory was that if you removed all the barriers, the invisible hand of the market would lift all boats. Well, it certainly lifted some. It lifted the yachts of the multinational CEOs. It lifted the boats of the CCP. But the American worker, the factory towns of Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, those boats sank. And everyone in Washington pretended not to notice until 2016, when Donald Trump came down their golden escalator. Actually, technically, it was summer of 2015, now I think about it. And he said what nobody in either party was willing to say, that free trade as practice was a raw deal for the American people. And he didn't just talk about it. He did something about it. In his first term, he imposed tariffs on China, on steel, on aluminum. The establishment shrieked, "Trade war! It's a trade war!" They screamed, "Economic suicide," they said. But you know what happened? Factories started coming back. Supply chains started shifting. And a conversation that had been forbidden in polite economic circles was suddenly the only conversation anyone was having. And in his second term, he was all in. He went all in. Average U.S. tariffs went from 2% to 17%, the highest in nearly 100 years. And the results? The United States collected a record $287 billion in custom duties in 2025, nearly triple the amount collected in 2024. That money isn't going to Beijing. That money isn't going to Brussels. It's going right here into the United States Treasury. The fiscal deficit dropped from 6.9% of GDP in 2024 to 5.4% in 2025. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says they're targeting 3% by 2028. But here's what's really incredible and what the globalists never predicted. Instead of retaliating against Trump's tariffs, countries around the world started copying him. They looked at what Trump was doing and said, wait a minute now, maybe we should be protecting our industries too? The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development just released a report that found that governments using tariffs as protectionist and strategic tools rose sharply in 2025, Trump's first year back in office. It's a global phenomenon. It's called economic nationalism, where economic policies are implemented as forms of national security, and it's all happening because Trump made it happen. There's a Harvard study from the Belfer Center just made a fascinating observation. They said that Trump's embrace of economic nationalism in his first term was the political earthquake that made everything that followed possible. So it wasn't just a policy change, it was a paradigm shift. It shattered the neoliberal consensus that had dominated both parties for 40 years. And now in his second term, Trump is cementing that shift. The old world of Davos-style globalism, where faceless bureaucrats in Geneva decided the economic fate of American workers, that world is over. What we're seeing now is a world where nations compete on the basis of strength, not supplication, where a country's first obligation is to its own citizens, its own workers, and its own industries. And the man who made that possible, the man who took the slings and arrows, who endured the ridicule, who was called every name in the book, is Donald J. Trump. So the Supreme Court can issue whatever rulings they want. The globalists can throw whatever tantrums they want. The rhinos can vote however they want. It doesn't matter because the genie is already out of the bottle. Economic nationalism is here. It's here in America. It's here in Europe. It's here in Asia. And there's no putting it back. The age of the globalist free ride is over. And the age of the American worker has just begun. Before you go, quick personal invite. I opened a free preview of my weekly members-only episode for the Courageous Patriots Club called Turley Walks. No pressure, just a gift. Click below to watch your free episode. I think you've been looking for something just like this.